Hello, people of the internet, and welcome to the addendum to the Godzilla in Animation retrospective, where my friend Matthew Denian and I take a look at every single incarnation of Godzilla in animation. And of course, as I just obviously stated, I am here once again with Matthew Denian, the novelist behind such kaiju thriller novels such as Atomic Rex, Chimera Scourge of the Gods, Operation Rock, and many more to come, hopefully in the near future. Give it up for Mr. Matt.
Hey, everybody. Thanks for having me back again. And Andres, I owe you a sincere apology. I know this is the third time you're going to be reviewing this film now, and only a true friend would sit down and do that with somebody. So I appreciate it. I want you to know that.
It's all right, man. I appreciate it. You know what? It's just like, this is the thing that's been building up since I saw the movie back in May, where as soon as I saw that Godzilla City on the Edge of Battle, which is the second installment in the Godzilla anime trilogy that has been pumped out by Toho Studios, directed by Kobun Shizuno, Hiroyuki Seshita, and written by Gen Urobuchi, who's probably the most prolific person in this project, known for such stuff such as Madoka Magica and even Kamen Rider Gaim, and a bunch of other stuff that I'm unfortunately not familiar with. But yeah, I saw it in May 2018, and I made a scripted review back then to give my initial first impressions on it, and I was not a happy camper, I'll tell you that.
Yeah.
And then I did a review with Daikaiju Spacezilla, who is like a new Godzilla YouTuber, and so he asked me, he was a fan of mine and a friend, and he asked me, hey, would you like to do a review with me? And it's like, yeah, sure. And we had opposite opinions, even though I was really negative on it. I tried really hard to hold back because I didn't want to just come out as rude, because it's like, this guy's like, yeah, I like this part, what do you think about it? I didn't want to go, it was fucking trash.
Yeah.
I tried really hard to reserve myself saying I didn't like it, but no, here it is, because
Yeah.
you and I, we're on the same, you and I have pretty much almost got a similar taste in films. We have similar likes and dislikes, and I feel like now I can just go all out into this thing. So yes, Godzilla City on the Edge of Battle came out in Japan May 18th, 2018, and it came out as of this recording this month in July, I think mid-July, right after G-Fest. And,
yeah, July 18th.
Right, and just like the first movie, which was Godzilla Planet of the Monsters, the reception has been quite divided. There are people who really like it, people who hate it, and people who are like, you know what, it's pretty decent if you have low expectations going in. So yeah, there's been a wide variety of differing opinions. Although I have a feeling that already, despite the fact that it's been only a couple weeks since its Netflix release, I feel like the hype for Godzilla City on the Edge of Battle, as well as Godzilla Planet Eater or Star Eater, whatever they're going to eventually call it, the third movie, it's already sort of died down, and people are starting to already move on and forget that this thing even existed as soon as that Godzilla King of the Monsters 2019 trailer came out.
Yeah, I was going to say, yeah, you're totally right. There's a little bit of blip about the City on the Edge of Battle at first, and I think most people didn't care for it. There were some who did, and if you did, that's fantastic. But yeah, when the trailer for Godzilla King of the Monsters came out, that just totally pushed this where it belongs.
Right, it's like, this is what I feel like this is what the fans want.
Yeah, yeah.
And of course, people are probably going to bring this up. One of our biggest one of the things that our biggest issues was something that the Omni viewer brought up in his video, where he talked about the biggest issues that he's had with the anime trilogy so far, and that is it doesn't want to properly utilize its monster cast. It doesn't know how to properly utilize the monsters within its own series. And I get the feeling that this is kind of what this whole trilogy is all about, where it's these are writers and directors that are not people who are familiar with giant monster stuff, and so rather they're just putting their own a sci-fi fantasy sci-fi twist on things and kind of subvert people's expectations and do the exact opposite of what people are. They want to do nothing but subvert audiences' expectations. And you know what? I'm totally fine with that. I feel like you can make any idea work. It's the execution that matters. And in my opinion, changing something and then doing nothing with that change that you made is what really leads to the downfall of this anime trilogy so far.
Totally agree. You and I, so people know, we watched this together, and I guess it was the first time you saw it in English, right?
Right.
You were streaming it.
That's a funny thing. So I barely survived the first movie because, again, one of the things I'll get into is that this is like a really boring movie, and I barely held on while I was watching the first time in theaters, just because I was holding on to the idea of seeing anime Mechagodzilla in action. I'm a giant robot fan. I like seeing my big robots, in action. And obviously, spoiler alert, we're going to go into full spoilers, by the way, for this long analysis. There is no Mechagodzilla. And so I was really, really pissed off. And so when I saw this movie, I was also bored. But the thing that kept me awake was just constantly riffing the movie alongside you, Matt.
Yeah, that was fun. I wish we could release that, actually. Strike on your channel, right?
Right. But then that would require me having to rewatch the whole thing again.
Oh, God. I'm not sure I could do it, man. God bless you for doing it twice already.
Where was I going with this? But, so the thing is, it's like, I'm okay with you trying to do something different, just make it interesting. And yes, it is different, but not interesting. But even if you consider this, among the vast history of sci-fi storytelling, what it's doing isn't really all that. It's different for Godzilla, but not so different for the world of sci-fi.
No, and not even that coherently well done, as we'll get into with this story, where it just didn't hold as some of the things that established in the first story weren't carried over into this story.
Yeah. And, I'm sure there's going to be people who will complain that's saying that we're just a bunch of nostalgic fanboys and we hate it because it's different and we only want, you're expecting a Godzilla versus Mechagodzilla battle and that's already been done before. Why can't you appreciate something that's new and different? Again, I think it all boils down to this. Different does not equal good. Doesn't always equal good.
No, and here's how I try to think about that perspective, is that had this not been called Godzilla, had this just been called, Return to Earth, and there was some other monster that they just made up and gave us this other cast, I don't think I would still enjoy this movie.
Right, yeah.
Does that make sense, right? Like, even if it wasn't called Godzilla, so I didn't have I need Godzilla to be this, that, or the other thing for me to be happy. Because I had a lot of people mention that to me when they asked me my first impressions. And I thought about it, I was like, no, if this was just this core group of characters and there was some monster that was still in the same role as Godzilla, I would still think this movie was just as boring.
I mean, people have already made comparisons saying that this is a lot like Attack on Titan, like a more boring version of Attack on Titan.
Right.
Where it's, people get kicked out of their own habitat and now they're fighting to reclaim it. And there's a giant monster among monsters that they have to take down ultimately and find out but at least even with Attack on Titan, there's a lot of secrets as to where these monsters came from. Here it's like there's no secret. There's nothing, no sort of substance to this franchise so far.
No, you also get an Attack on Titan character growth, which we don't really get much of in these two movies. Yeah. And I know you had mentioned it a lot in our first review, and I felt the same way, that if the first movie was just kind of setting the table, so to speak, for the next two.
And that's what a lot of reason why people were so lenient on the first movie, because it's like, hey, then don't worry, even though this was sort of slow, the next movie, that's where it's going to have to pick things up, and that's where I know it'll succeed. And it didn't, in our opinion. Which makes the first movie retroactively also worse, in my opinion.
Yeah, I totally agree. That doesn't make it worse.
Yeah, because now we know that slow buildup is going to lead to no payoff. So this is a slow buildup with no payoff.
Right, and it leaves me with no hope for the third film. I did have some hope after the first one that this one would pick up, but now I'm like, I think we can expect the same thing for the third film whenever it comes out.
Yeah, but we can discuss that at the very end. So to start things off, I guess, we've already started things off by giving our general opinions going into this. What basically happens in this movie is that it takes place right after the events of the first movie, where the real Godzilla shows up. People call him Godzilla Earth. I'm just going to call him Godzilla from here on out because there's no other Godzillas anymore.
Yeah.
So Godzilla shows up, he wipes out everyone, and Haruo our main protagonist, is separated from the rest of the bunch. He wakes up in this sort of hut that is, and he's realized that he was rescued by this one apparently human, but I'll go into that, a humanoid being by the name of, I want to say Miana or Mina. Their names are so similar. Let's see.
Yeah.
Let me check. It is Miana.
Miana, yeah.
So it was this native girl named Miana who rescues him, and it was through Miana that he's able to reunite with the rest of his team slowly over time. And then by like the halfway mark, they realize, oh, what are they briefly take a look at the Miana and her twin sister Mina's tribes, sort of in habitat, and there they find these like group of surviving humans, I think called the Hotua, or according to the Japanese dub, the Futsuwa. Not sure why they changed the name, but oh well, Hotua it is. And at that point they realize that these humanoids, the Hotua, are able to fight off these animal-like monsters by using leftover pieces of nanometal that the Bilisaludians created for Mechagodzilla. It's at that point that Miana and Mina then point them in the direction of the source of the nanometal, where they find out that the remains of Mechagodzilla has sort of spread out and covered this entire canyon to create what they dub Mechagodzilla City. And it's at that point, by the hour mark, that our protagonists finally do something of interest, where they utilize Mechagodzilla City in order to create a second trap for Godzilla, which is basically just a bigger version of the trap and trap from the first movie. And at that point, they just redo the whole climax. Only this time, there's some really forced character growth or character exposition that's like comes out of nowhere and is poorly handled. And by the end of things, everything is pretty much the same as it was at the end of the first movie. Only now you got less characters to deal with.
Yeah, and that's pretty much it. If you guys haven't seen the movie yet, then you're done. I mean, Andres just told it in a much more interesting fashion than it comes across. Just sit there and give up an hour and a half of your life. So. Good job.
Yeah. So it's like, the thing is, like, this movie features so many interesting ideas and then just does nothing with them. Like the idea, like the Hotua. The Hotua are, surviving humans, I think. And then, they've survived this long, like 20,000 years later. They kind of have this very almost like Native American style of civilization, although their civilization is almost never explored. You see their like underground caves and it looks barren and empty. You have no feeling that this is like a lived-in civilization. You see some elderly people. They talk about worshiping an egg that is never seen. They
don't even see the egg, Andres. I just want you to think about that for a second.
Yeah. They can't even bother to render an egg, an immobile egg.
Right. They can't even show an egg.
I mean, can't you just look at the past movies? Just show, there's a temple, there's an altar, there's a big ass egg, and everyone's like, bowing before the egg.
Yeah.
Come on, people from, this is like live action stuff, compositions and models and stuff, and they couldn't do this in animation? No, he just had a big wall with like a scarab beetle looking thing, a moth like scarab beetle Egyptian style thing design on the wall.
Right. And one thing you and I talked about in depth as we're watching the film was they don't go over anything about the Hotua. They briefly mention...
We learn nothing about them other than they worshipped a god, the god fought Godzilla, the god died, and now they protect an unseen egg.
Right. Even the two twins, like the one seems kind of nice and the other seems like a bitch, but they don't really go into much about it.
Right. It's just, they're just one-note cardboard characters. Yeah, as you mentioned, you just summed up the twins' entire character, and actually had a lot of hope. I was hoping that there would be some sort of interesting relationship to develop between the humans, the Bilisaludians, the Exifs, and the Hotua. Maybe there'd be some sort of connection between the two, the people of space and the people of Earth, combine together, maybe join forces, maybe learn from one another. Maybe the Hotua can inspire, Harold on his quest to, seek some sort of greater purpose in life, and, maybe, learn to grow as a better person. But no, the Hotua basically do not factor into this movie at all, outside of pointing them in the direction of the nanometal, which again, they don't even really do that. They just, it's Miana and Mina. That's like, I'll grant them that it was their decision and their decision alone to help the humans, but we don't know why they do it. We don't know, like, what's their motivation. And after that, it's not like they get reprimanded by the elders. The elders are like, we will watch this. We will watch this, how this will play out. We don't know why, we don't know what we want. We don't know, we are not going to show any sort of emotion as to how this will play out. We're just going to sit here and watch them.
Right. There's some other interesting things they briefly mention about the Hotua, and they don't come back to it. Like the Bill Studios make a point to say, like, we don't know they're human. They could be some kind of highly evolved insects.
And what?
Yeah. But they never go anywhere. They're like, okay,
right. It's like, I'm not sure evolution works that way within a span of 20,000 years.
Right. You know,
also, what exactly makes them? What exactly makes them insect? By the way, sure, they worship Mothra, but they came from Mothra. What the fuck are you talking about?
Exactly. I thought, like, oh, maybe these are some, like, kind of Mothra avatars that she's created to keep an eye on the planet. No, you don't know. They briefly mention that and then throw it out. You know, nothing else to it.
Yeah.
So.
And it's like, you know, these are not humans. You know, they're not capable of true intelligence. Excuse me, but they have the ability to telecommunicate through telekinesis. I'm pretty sure the fact that they can communicate at all shows that they are intelligent species.
Right. And they've evolved to live on this planet where nothing else seems to that's not affected by Godzilla, because that was another weird thing where, like, they kind of let us I'm going off on a tangent. They kind of let us in the first one to believe the planet was Godzilla, and then it's like, no, things just kind of evolved Godzilla.
That's another idea, yeah, that goes nowhere. The idea that Godzilla is a plant, or at least looks like a plant, and this is something that OmniViewer brought up, and brilliantly, hit the nail on the head on, where it's like, he's a plant, yes, why? What sort of purpose does that serve in the story? And we thought because he's a plant, he must have somehow influenced, caused the growth of Godzilla-style plants all over the planet and Godzilla-style monsters. And we all thought that those Servum dragon creatures were like the offspring of Godzilla. But no, as it turns out, Godzilla did influence the life on Earth, but not in the way we thought. Rather, all the plants just adapted and copied Godzilla in terms of its like overall DNA structure and all that stuff. Kind of like I forgot what it's called, parallel evolution. It's sort of like the thing where it's like
it's like how an ostrich and an emu kind of are the same way, but they evolved separately.
Or to go in a more drastic comparison, bats and birds, they are mammals and avians that develop the ability to fly, or fishes and dolphins, a mammal and a fish that are able to develop a similar body type in order to live underwater. So it's like, convergent evolution. I think that's what
convergent.
It's called.
Yeah, I think it's convergent. Mm.
So that's all it is. And so Godzilla had no direct impact on on life on Earth. So it's like, again, why is he a plant?
Right. And then talking about other points that they just kind of left from the first movie, we saw in the first movie that they held up a knife to a plant and it cut the knife in half. But in this movie, you see the Hotua just kind of running through the trees like the regular trees and through leaves and stuff. Like, wait a second, did you guys make this big point about showing us that all the plant life here is hostile too? But I guess now it's not, Like,
I guess so. It's never brought up again.
No.
Yeah, and again, this whole time I was expecting someone to die like a horribly gory death by falling on a bush and cutting himself to pieces.
Right, that's like Mortal Kombat fatality type thing. It never happened.
Yeah, and let's see, there was another thing where they mentioned that humans caused the existence of giant monsters in the first place, even though we never saw it happen. It's like they say that Godzilla came from humans, but it's never built upon. It's just so it's so vague that it can just be, fit in the continuity of any Godzilla movies had it not been for Plantzilla here.
Right.
And again, they never exposit as to exactly how any of these monsters came about, especially Godzilla, which to me is a big problem. It's like, it seems like everyone knows where Godzilla comes from, but they're not willing to tell the audience. And I'm sure not even the writers know at this point.
Yeah, I'm really not. You're right. Because why would you keep it a secret from the audience this far in? At this point.
Right. And let's see, what's another? Oh yeah, one of the other biggest mishandlings was the idea of nanometal. Now, nanometal seemed kind of interesting. It's like this like liquidy, almost like T1000 sort of technology that's able to be utilized and can turn into anything else, into anything, any sort of machine, and still have all the like the buttons and wires and all sorts of technology needed for it to power up. And again, and so they use this idea to make Mechagodzilla, and it's like, okay, so if the nanometal around Mechagodzilla is like growing more and more, you think, okay, so maybe Mechagodzilla grew bigger, or in the case of turning into a city, maybe he's like Metroplex, where he's like a transforming city.
Yes, which would have been very cool if they had done that.
Yeah, or imagine like all the nanometal just like turning into liquid and then just coming together to form bigger Mechagodzilla, Super Mechagodzilla.
Right.
But yeah, they don't nothing. It just, and again, okay, if you want to make it a city, sure. But what does the city amount to? It's just a bunch of boring domes and pipes that don't really serve any sort of function other than to literally take up space. Oh, okay, so maybe they do mention that the domes do pump out this sort of gas, and it's this gas that prevents it from being detected by Godzilla. Okay, but that's still not very interesting.
Right, which they kind of make a point that it's why Godzilla kind of hangs out and circles the area, because he knows something's there, but he can't really find it. And they don't really do much with that. It comes up later in the story, but they also apparently somehow whatever Mothra is giving off can counteract it, but they don't really describe that, why it works, or do much either. With like the Mothra pollen can maybe stop it.
Like the weird like red, almost like a red powder, the shiny red powder that's never explained where it came from.
Right. In fact, like thankfully you'd already seen the movie, because when it does come into play, you had to point out to me early, like, oh, okay, remember that he's got this red powder on him, because you're going to forget what it is later.
Yeah.
It's like not brought up at all. And then it's going to come back later, but they're not going to explain it later either. Like, they don't go back in like a flashback and be like, oh, you've got this red powder on you. It'll stop. No, nothing. It's just kind of there.
Yeah. And it's like I mentioned before, like Mechagodzilla City doesn't really factor a whole lot into the movie.
Right.
I mean, yeah, it's used to make the giant trap, but it's not like Godzilla actually goes into the city, where it would be cool if he entered the city and every building turns into a weapon. Maybe every building turns into every dome turns into a different weapon.
Yes,
I was talking about this with Spacezilla's review, that what if, to make it truly a Mechagodzilla City, we had a bunch of callbacks to past Mechagodzilla weaponry. Maybe we had like the finger missiles from the Showa series, we had like the shock cables from the Heisei series, the plasma cannon from, or the plasma cannon or the absolute zero cannon from the Millennium series, and then just incorporate all this shit into Mechagodzilla City, so that when Godzilla's in the middle of the city, it's like it's a full-on assault from all sides. But no, it's just a bunch of boring turrets on the perimeter of the city. Godzilla never goes into Mechagodzilla City. He just briefly like enters the perimeter and then is greeted by a big mechanical trench, some walls, and a bunch of turret guns.
And Godzilla does exactly what you expect him to do. He just stands there.
Right. And Godzilla, I'll get into Godzilla later, but I feel like Mechagodzilla was the most wasted piece in this whole movie. It's like, and the thing is, they even mentioned that, Mechagodzilla must have fought Godzilla at one point and was severely damaged and went into hiding, and so now all that's left is this head of his. And I'm thinking, it would have been nice to have seen that.
Right, do a flashback scene. Right, how cool would that have been?
Yeah, same with the Mothra flashback. But again, they want to subvert expectations by showing no monster footage, because apparently the people behind this movie does not like showing monster action. What was the other thing that... Oh yeah, so they never explained why Mechagodzilla suddenly was able to fight Godzilla when it couldn't before. That whole thing was why it never activated like 20,000 years ago.
Right.
Was never explained. And yet they're able to activate Mechagodzilla's head, and they're able to gain control of the Mechagodzilla City. Again, not like you were able to activate it now, but not back then?
Again, they don't explain it either. There's no plot device that the power source wasn't sufficient or whatever.
Yeah,
nothing.
At first, I was thinking that maybe it was like an AI thing. Maybe Mechagodzilla had developed its own a mind of its own and refused to fight, and so now it's acting on its own accord. And now, again, that would have been cool, and it would have been cool to have seen this like sort of HAL 9000 Mechagodzilla AI take control of the entire city and communicate with the humans, or maybe start acting on its own. But no, that's never the case. Mechagodzilla City is simply a tool for the Bilisaludians to just use, and it's really the Bilisaludians, as we later find out, they're the ones who turn the nanometal into more of a threat than it really was.
Right, and the thing is, like you said, if the city had some kind of a consciousness, that could have been cool. Like you said, the city reacts to Godzilla being in there or does something, but it just doesn't. It just kind of like expands slowly.
The only time the nanometal or Mechagodzilla City ever acts on its own accord was when it created these large like spike traps for the servums, which why it never attacked any of the other people with giant spears of death, I don't know. But it never does anything like that ever again.
Right. They could have done so much more that they just didn't. All of those things you just laid out would have been excellent. Like you said, the throwbacks they had.
Yeah, and I'm just pulling out all these ideas out of my ass here, you know?
Right, or how cool it would have been to, they can make constructs from it. What if they just made the Showa Mechagodzilla, the Heisei Mechagodzilla, and the Millennium Mechagodzilla? So, like, even if they're smaller than Godzilla, we got this cool scene.
It's at least an army of Mechagodzillas.
Right, like an army of smaller Mechagodzillas, and they all look like different versions of Mechagodzilla. That would have been cool.
But again, they don't want to do that. They want to do their own sci-fi thing. And I'll give them credit. You know, they put a lot of focus on the vultures, which are like upgraded new robots based on the old boring mechs from the first movie. And I'll admit, the vultures are very cool, and the scenes that they are involved in are also very nice, very well done, and are perhaps the highlight of the movie. But unfortunately, given all these exciting ideas that we were given with Mechagodzilla and Mechagodzilla City, I was expecting a lot more than just the vultures. For me, it's like the vultures are a neat little distraction before the main event, but unfortunately they are the main event, so it's like they sort of end up being a disappointment for me, as cool as they are.
You're totally right. Had the vultures been the precursor to something else, that would have been much better. They were kind of cool in themselves. They kind of have like and you know much more about this, like a Gundam design look to them.
Oh yeah, they kind of have those like feathered wings, and several Gundams in the past have had like wing designs. And they're very cool, and I do appreciate them designing them with actual heads, because I don't know, I've never really liked mech designs that don't have an actual head placed on top of the body. That's just one of my pet peeves. As we were saying.
So that scene was pretty good for as short as it was, but. Yeah, I feel like that should have been, if it had the army of Mechagodzillas followed them, that really would have helped out a lot, I feel like, in terms of making this a more enjoyable movie, at least for me.
And again, you know, people would criticize this, saying that you're only judging this movie based on what you want. We're only coming up with what we would have liked to have seen, only because it's so boring with what they've given us in the movie that we can't help but come up with alternative means of how this could have been executed.
Right, because otherwise, I don't know what else we could possibly talk about. Like, there's not much character development for us.
I guess we can go into that. It's like, for the longest time, it's just our characters standing around and talking about what they're going to do next, walking to another location, staying around, talk about what they're going to do next, and just give like nothing but scientific exposition and some half-assed excuses that, the Hoto are insects, or humans created kaiju, or Mechagodzilla turned into a city. It's just like nothing but exposition all around. And there is one character who was given the task of providing more exposition than previously, and he was like blonde guy number 3. And I don't think he really exposited that much information in the last movie. Or if he did, I couldn't tell. I couldn't tell him apart from the other characters. But here it's like, now that we got a smaller cast, I guess he was assigned to be the main expositor outside of the Bill of Saludians. And then I guess I'll give more credit to them trying to flesh out the Bill of Saludians by showing them as this very like prideful sort of race that like takes a lot of confidence in their technology, a lot of pride in their technology, and they're willing to have this sort of idea of like winning the battle by any means necessary. Even if it goes into a darker path where it's like they show they're willing to give up their own mortality, they're giving up their own sense of humanity, their individuality, if it means becoming a stronger being all around.
Well, I didn't even think they did a great job in doing that. Because like the way you're describing it might have been more akin to how I would have felt like the Klingons might be in Star Trek.
Yeah, they remind me a lot of the Klingons.
Yeah, where like, you know, self-sacrifice might be the step to helping everybody else out, or like it's good to be a brave warrior and put your comrades ahead of you. But in this instance, like they made a good point of constantly coming back to the fact that the ultimate goal for them was to basically evolve into a kaiju, which kind of came out of nowhere again. Like that wasn't something they established in the first one.
Yeah. Nor do like the Bill of Saludians still up on the ship that we only go back to like once or twice.
Yeah, what happened to the ship, by the way?
And the whole thing with the conspiracy theory between like was the grandpa, was he murdered, or were the people from the beginning of the first movie, were they murdered, or was it really an accident? The whole conspiracy theory like thing, it's like it went nowhere in the second movie. But yeah, we don't know if that's what like the main Bill of Saludian guy wants. We don't know if these Galagoo and Ballyhoo or whatever, Bibbidi Bobbidi Boo, they don't know if there's we don't know if that's what they want or if that's what like all the Bill of Saludians want. And also it looks like they were sacrificing other Bill of Saludians so that they could have better control over the nanometal. It's very unclear.
Right, it's unclear, and it wasn't very well established that they were doing this for any kind of altruistic means. Like, were the Bill Saludians making the sacrifice in order to save everybody else? That would have added some more depth to the story. And they kind of played around with the fact that, maybe the Bill Saludians were looking to actually conquer everything down the line, but they didn't really even establish that as much as they just focused on, well, we need to evolve into a kaiju because that's the next thing to do. And part of it's like, well, evolution doesn't work on an individual basis. Like you're not a Pokemon, for the most time. Like that's a species type of thing. Especially when they established the fact that Mechagodzilla had been growing for 20,000 years, wouldn't it make more sense for the Bill Saludians to maybe have a plan where, like, over time their species evolved into kaiju as opposed to them themselves being just kind of absorbed like they were into the city?
And that's the thing. When they were absorbed into the city, when I first saw this in Japanese theaters, I thought that they were giving themselves up so that they could have proper control over the nanometal.
Right.
Because maybe the nanometal was getting too unwieldy. But then it's like, oh no, they're just doing that so that they can make the nanometal stronger, not to gain control. They already have control, they just want to make it stronger somehow?
Or it's never really explained either. Like, does that make it more like a cyborg now? No, not really. They just kind of,
fall asleep.
Yeah, it helps just absorb people. And had they made that like the city was doing that against their will, I thought would have been cool too. Like if they'd gone to this city and all of a sudden, hey, it's sucking people in to absorb them, like the Blob or something, or
right.
Or the Thing from John Carpenter's movie to kind of make itself better. That really would have added an aspect onto the story of like horror and cast Mechagodzilla as a villain. And this is why Godzilla's trying to seek it out, but they didn't really even do much of that either.
And there was later a point where what's his name? I can't believe I forgot his name because he's like the most interesting character. He was the Exif. Metphis, yes, thank you.
Mm-hmm.
So he keeps describing the nanometal as this evil thing that's just as bad as the monsters. And he later reveals to Haruo that this thing could potentially take over the Earth and could be just as big of a threat as Godzilla if they continue to weaponize it. And I feel like that's a strong, one of the biggest examples of, it's one of the, like, they're breaking one of the biggest rules, and that is show, don't tell. They're telling us that it's bad, they're telling us that it's going to do bad things, but we don't see any of it outside of people volunteering to let themselves be absorbed by the nanometal. Other than that, we don't really see any sort of indication that this thing could be a threat to mankind, other than just listening to the words of Metphys.
Right, and then even, they don't even really go into what it means psychologically for the group that some people are being absorbed by this city. Like, in fact, they kind of have this weird turn where, I can't remember her name either. All the characters are so forgettable. What's the main female?
Yuko.
Yuko. Is kind of like, people were discussing very briefly, like, it's a good thing that the Bill Salutis are being absorbed. Well, it's just a Bill Salutis, Yuko says. If they want to, I say we let them.
Sure. That sort of development came out of nowhere for her.
Yeah.
She went from being, I'll follow you wherever you want to go, senpai, to, I'm going to choose to do this thing that you don't want, senpai.
Right, just out of nowhere.
Again, it's the interesting idea. So I feel like what they were trying to do with Yuko is that they wanted to have her be a sort of darker reflection of Haruo, where Haruo was this sort of Captain Ahab type character where he was so obsessed with this single-minded need to take down Godzilla. And so we clearly saw Yuko being inspired by Haruo's actions in the first movie, that now she's sort of like taking on the mantle of being the person to take down Godzilla, and sort of like, I was inspired by Haruo, so now I want to act and think like Haruo. And by the end of the movie, it causes her what seems to be her ultimate demise, and that's sort of meant to serve as a lesson for Haruo to not go that path, while also feeling that guilt that he inadvertently caused Yuko's downfall by inspiring her to go down said path. Again, great idea.
Right.
Poor execution, because, again, all of this stuff that we're talking about, like the development of the Bilisaludians, the twist behind the nanometal, the relationship dynamic between Haruo and Yuko, all this happens within like the last 30 minutes of the movie, after like an hour of jack shit happening.
Right, and for people who would say that you and I don't like this because we like our Godzilla and our Mechagodzilla to be portrayed a certain way, it's not that. It's like you said. It's that these ideas aren't bad; they're just horribly executed throughout the entire franchise so far.
This is like, it's basic writing 101. You're a writer. I guess I can call myself a writer at this point. I got something published after all, by the way, which I will plug at the end of this review. Like, this is not how you do character character arcs. You let this develop through the course of a story, not during the last final act of said story.
Right. Like, honestly, I feel like if I had submitted this story to my publishers, they would have said no thanks.
Yeah.
Really. Because the character development is so rushed at the end, and there's no kind of build to it. You don't see slow growth. It's just sharp turns.
Right.
Where, and now in a good story, you can have like an impact moment that changes somebody, but it should build up to that. It shouldn't just be like this turn out of nowhere where Yuko's all of a sudden like, oh yeah, let's do this thing now. Like, wait, what? You were like the calm person before. Where did this come from? Like, you said it. Yes. She wants to be like Haruo, but you don't see her building towards that. She just changes.
Yeah, and there's sort of like this love triangle that comes out of, not love triangle, well, it's kind of implied, where Haruo has developed a sort of like emotional attachment, some like a very very loose attachment to Miyana, and so that makes Yuko jealous in that sort of like anime love triangle sort of way. And then so by the end of right before the climax, she professes her feelings to Haruo, she kisses him, and she does the whole speech of, I will be by your side, even though I'm going to contradict that in the next scene. And of course, it's like this last minute relationship that's brought up just so we can have that that artificial emotional moment by the very end when Haruo is crying over Yuko's supposed corpse. And it's like, for other people, it works. For them, that last minute romance was enough for them to get emotional. For me, I was not affected. I was not emotionally invested whatsoever. I had no connection to any of these characters. So by the end of the movie, I was like, whatever. I was indifferent. I had nothing but indifference to these characters by the end.
Right. I feel the same way. I felt nothing when Yuko died. Like, it should have been kind of a sad moment, but it's because they don't build her up.
Yeah. It's like we're not given this sort of attachment at all whatsoever.
No, so I don't feel attached to any of these characters I'm watching it. So when that moment happens, it's kind of like, oh, okay. And I know it's not just you and I who feel that way. I've talked to many other people who feel the same. So
yeah, and I guess lastly we have Haruo, who's the main protagonist, but he's got like the least to do in this movie. Even though he's one of the main characters who is out there in the Vulture who does something, and he's supposedly the leader or commander of this squad. What they try to do here, they try to calm him down. They try to give him some character development by having him actually question his motivations and saying, what am I supposed to do in life? What am I supposed to... He starts to second guess. Like, at first he's like, yes, let's use the nanometal to kill Godzilla. But then by the end he's like, I'm not sure. I'm having second thoughts about this. But we don't know exactly why he's having second thoughts. And we don't know why he's suddenly starting to question himself. It sort of comes out of nowhere saying, this doesn't feel right. I don't know what to do at this point. So he tries to go to Metphies for, for consolation.
Yeah. I guess consolation would be the word I'm looking for. Or consultation. He goes to kind of talk to him.
That's a consultation. So he tries to go to Metphies for consultation, and like he gets a stronger resolve by the end that he's not willing to give up everything for the sake of killing Godzilla, and that there are some things more important than killing Godzilla. But again, for me, it's just none of it really felt natural, and none of it really left an impact on me whatsoever.
No, and I thought they had totally missed opportunity with Miyana and the Hotua.
Yeah,
in that
they could have provided a really great motivation for Haruo to change his mind about the nanometal. Maybe he learns the relationship between the nanometal and how the Hotua used them. Maybe the final battle is gonna risk destroying the Hotua's environment, civilization. Maybe that's what makes him change his mind, saying, no, we cannot sacrifice the Hotua just to kill Godzilla. And that'll show he has humanity and he has compassion for other people.
Right.
But no, it's like none of that. Like, it would have been great, so much of an improvement if the Hotua factored more into his overall character growth, but it doesn't really from the looks of things.
Right, they don't really talk about this at all. So even till they get to the point where they basically have to wipe out Mechagodzilla, right? They've kind of already established so that the Hotua do to an extent rely on the metal that's growing from Mechagodzilla for their weapons
that's
to protect
very true.
themselves.
Yeah, they keep saying that, this is a bad thing, we shouldn't use it. And yet the Hotua are perfectly fine using it.
Right. And now I'm guessing it's from, again, they don't really explain this, the fact that they have like the red powder kind of from Mothra, but then you're talking about it's this nanometal is the only thing that they can use to kill the Servalum and the snake things or whatever monsters that they tell don't show us are around. And now you've taken it away from them because they destroy the whole city, right? So you're putting Hotswan in an issue there too. And then you would think if you'd landed on this planet that they might say like, oh, we thought nothing could live here except for monsters, but the Hotua have managed to carve out an existence for themselves. Maybe we should kind of see how they're doing it so we can adapt like they have to live on the planet. But no, they don't do that, it could have been like a Pocahontas, Disney's Pocahontas type story, but with Godzilla-ish in there, where they're trying to, Miyana's trying to show Haruo how to function in this new world now, but they don't do that either. They just kind of let it go.
Right. Oh, dear God. And so, and I guess the last thing to talk about is, there's no point talking about about Metphies because he doesn't do anything other than to name drop King Ghidorah by the very end. Here's one thing I really like. So, up on the ship, there's a conversation between the one of the main Exifs and one of the main Billisoludians. And the main Exif says that he's going to use his like special religious rock or rock or something to pray and for an idea, pray for like a plan to come up with a plan to dictate their next course of action. And when the humans are questioning what that is, what supposed praying means, one of the Billisoludians sees it as a form of advanced calculation, that they're not so much praying for an answer, rather they're doing some advanced calculations that will lead them to a solution to their problems. And I thought that was a really great sense of world building there, where the Billisoludians are very calculating kind of people, the Exifs are more religious, and so more spiritual, I mean, and so what the Exifs view as this great divine being or deity, the Billisoludians see it as just, oh, that's just your advanced means of calculations and an advanced sort of technology that you only see as a view in a spiritual sort of way. I thought that was very fascinating, and I wish that we got more of that.
Yes, that's what I'm saying. Yes, I agree with you there. That was cool, because you and I made a point to stop kind of the film and talk about that for a minute, actually, and then we got nothing else from it, but it would have been interesting to see. Like, I feel like that's kind of another Star Trek-y type of thing that they could have worked in well, and that, like, this technology is so advanced that these people now see it as a religion, like you said, which would have been neat to kind of play around with. And the Billisoludians maybe see it for what it is or don't see it for what it is, but they don't go anywhere else with it,
Right.
from there.
Yeah. And I guess...
I think that's...
Yeah?
I'm sorry. I think that's you and I keep saying it, is maybe the most frustrating point about this series is they'll give you like a neat thread and then do nothing with it, right?
Right. That's what all this entire series is. It's nothing but interesting ideas with poor execution. And I hate to constantly repeat myself here, but I just want to hammer that point home. And that this series could have been good had it been handled in a much different way. But anyways, the last thing to talk about, I guess, is Godzilla himself, in that not only is he barely in the movie at all, but the fact is, like, at this point in the series, he gets so little development over the course of these two movies, is that there's nothing about this Godzilla that makes him special in any way other than his appearance, which doesn't factor into the plot in any way. This Godzilla is sort of like very boring in a sense. He's slowly walking this way, then he's slowly walking that way. Oh, he's attacked, so he's gonna shoot his laser beam, then he's slowly gonna walk this way.
Right. I think one of the things, and maybe this is the last review too, that makes kaiju interesting, in particular Godzilla, is personality. Yeah. I feel like this Godzilla has zero personality.
Right, he's just, walking slowly, for no reason whatsoever, and then he only attacks when himself is provoked. And I guess you can definitely, of course you can make the same argument for Shin Godzilla, and that he's exactly the same way. And there are people who have problems with Shin Godzilla, they call him boring. But I feel like with Shin Godzilla, there's a lot happening around him, and a lot happening to him that still makes him interesting.
I agree with you.
Where, like, Godzilla, he is constantly mutating. He's constantly growing bigger and stronger. He's developing these strange, wild capabilities. And the fact is, he has this blank stare in his face. So you have, like, he's probably got some sort of motivation in mind. But the thing is, it's all shrouded in mystery. And that mystery that keeps it more interesting while all this extra crazy shit is happening to him physically. And the fact that there's, the movie itself is more focused on the political aspect, on the political drama surrounding Godzilla's actions, which, might not work for other people, but worked for me personally.
Yeah, and for me too. And I think that might be a good example for people who think that you and I only like a certain type of Godzilla. That we both enjoy Shin Godzilla.
Yeah, we enjoy like a very silent, quote-unquote boring Godzilla, as long as there's enough around him to make up for that. For us,
right.
There's the mystery, which is addressed, we know as much as the characters know, so we're kept in the dark along with the characters, so at least with the characters acknowledge, yes, we are trying to find out what this Godzilla is all about, even though we don't know where he came from. Here, in the anime trilogy, they know where he comes from, but they refuse to tell us.
Right. and we saw much better character development and character story arcs for a human protagonist in Shin Godzilla than we have in 2 anime films so far, I would say.
Right, and of course, if you're free to disagree if you happen
Right.
to not be a fan of Shin Godzilla.
Right.
But yeah, with Godzilla, he just doesn't really do anything, and by the time he does get involved in the action, to me, it's just a blatant rehash of the ending of the first movie. What happens in the first movie? He gets caught in the hole, and he gets killed. His life is threatened with EMP technology. What happens in this movie? He's bigger, but he falls into a bigger hole, and his life is threatened with EMP technology.
And then they did this thing with, and maybe I missed Cuss falling asleep, but he's heating up, but they don't really explain why.
Yeah, that's like, like I was so confused when I watched that in Japanese, and even a friend of mine, a friend of a friend whose Japanese was quite above average, he couldn't understand what was happening when I was talking to him as to what was going on with the body temperature thing, but I saw this in English, I was paying close attention to the subtitles, and I still couldn't understand what the fuck was going on with him biologically when his temperature started heating up for no reason, apparently. Maybe it was made some sort of like defense against dying? I don't know.
Yeah, I thought maybe at first it was supposed to be like an extension of the, what they call the nuclear pulse from the Heisei series, where like he could kind of send the nuclear breath out on the outside of his body, like if he was covered by all the destroyers or something like that. But they didn't really explain it. He just was kind of like heating up and melting everything around him.
But like, what exactly was happening to him? Was he actually going to die? Is this a burning Godzilla situation where he's going to explode or eventually explode or melt away? It's never explained other than like, oh, we just got to use our nanometals so that we can we have to attack him at this point with all 3 of our vultures, otherwise something's going to happen that we're being nondescript about.
Yeah, I didn't get it either. So please, if anybody can explain this in the comment section, please do, because
yeah.
I didn't get it. You didn't get it either, right? It's not just me being an
right.
idiot. It's just kind of like.
Go ahead.
Was it, maybe that was like you said his last attack to try to finish Mechagodzilla, at least make sure they both went down, but they didn't really explain that again either.
Right. And that's just a waste because again, like the thing that a lot of Godzilla fans are excited about is that, oh, this is the biggest, baddest Godzilla to have ever existed at like 300 meters. For me, I could give less of a shit about how big a monster is, as long as that it works into the plot. And I was very worried about this Godzilla being bigger because you're not going to notice that he's bigger because there's nothing around him to make him look all that big. Now, it would have been cool if they used Mechagodzilla being the same size he was 20,000 years ago and then have him try to like climb up Godzilla and try to attack him at his weak points.
Yes.
But no, it's like there's nothing here to show that he truly is that big. And a lot of people were complaining, oh, Godzilla's too big. And I kept telling my friends, like right before Planet of the Monsters came out, you're not going to notice that he's that big. And I was right.
Yeah.
What happens? They just build a bigger hole around him. So his size is easily dwarfed by all the traps that they set around him. So there was city. Go ahead.
I'm sorry, the city, too, is bigger, so it doesn't look like he's bigger compared to the buildings or anything that are in the city that we do have.
Right. So, there was no point in making him that big if they were not going to do anything with his size.
Right, and honestly, for as big as he is, you never see him use any kind of his body at all as a weapon or to do anything. He just walks.
Like, they did attempt to do that at the end of the first movie, where his roar is powerful enough to act like an atomic breath, and he's able to use that weird tail swipe energy attack. He does neither of those two things here.
No. We do get kind of like a progression for the breath, right? Whereas like it formed like more in front of him than we saw from the smaller Godzilla in the first film, but that's about it.
Right. And like, as for like anyone who's hoping that maybe Mechagodzilla will come back for the third movie, just to bring up a point I forgot to talk about. Yeah, Mechagodzilla ain't coming back after this.
No, 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 no.
Like, not only is he just ahead now, but the entirety of Mechagodzilla City was destroyed.
Yeah.
Yeah, and so I guess I'll lead to the one thing, and that is like the music and animation. The animation itself, I at this point I've gotten used to it. I've already said my spiel in the last review about how much I hate CG, 3D animated CG anime, and how it's attempting to copy the traits and low frame rate of 2D anime. At this point, I've kind of gotten used to it, but then there's a point where the frame rate gets very inconsistent. Like when you get to the point where Godzilla is trapped in that hole, the frame rate suddenly started getting too smooth to the point where it starts to look like a PS3 or a PS4 video game cutscene.
Yes.
Because, video games generally have higher frame rates of animation than any other kind of form of media, I think.
Yeah.
And so the frame rate got really inconsistent between being choppy and being really way too smooth.
It also...
Yeah.
I'm sorry, just to build on your point. It also gives this weird look where it looks like Godzilla's moving at different speeds at certain times.
Very true, yeah. It happened on one occasion in the last movie where Godzilla bursts his arm out of that rocky trap before being killed by the EMP attack. Here it just happens maybe 2 or 3 times in this film.
Right. I'm sorry to cut you off. So
no, it's all right. And but the one thing, props, I will give to the animation again to give credit where credit is due. I did like a lot of the visuals in this movie, at least during the last third of the movie, and I guess in other cases like the colors used for the Hotowa civilization, the sort of environment of Mechagodzilla City, the use of neon colors when Mechagodzilla is activating, the music especially when Mechagodzilla is activating, the animation used when they're using that 3D printer to build those robots and turret guns, and especially the visuals for the finale. Even though the finale itself is repetitive is derivative of the climax of the first movie, it at least looks visually much more stunning.
Yeah, I would agree with you on there. I thought that it looked better. The vultures were cool.
Right.
If I had to pick one bright spot from this movie, the vultures were pretty cool.
Right, everything involving them is very cool. Not cool enough to salvage this movie. I think that would have been Mechagodzilla's job, but
right,
it's suitable for what it is.
I mean, I hate to just keep talking about what could have been, but kind of when you first described it to me, and I know you said don't get too excited, but yeah. How cool would it have been to have seen almost Mechagodzilla as a giant T-1000 fighting Godzilla, right?
Right.
It
doesn't matter what if you decide to make it into a city, if you decide to build some vulture robots, none of it is going to be as cool as a giant robot dinosaur.
Right.
If you're not going to use your giant robot dinosaur, what's the point of including it in this universe?
Exactly.
But you know why they did that? Because I'm sure they thought because they wanted to subvert audiences' expectations, and they probably thought that their shit was better than what came before. That's my theory, anyways.
The whole subverting expectations, though, how long do they think they can be successful with that? Do you know what I mean?
Right. Right now they're teasing King Ghidorah, so I'm assuming that King Ghidorah, rather than being a 3-headed dragon, maybe he's probably going to end up being some sort the Phoenix Force. He's just this big ball of fire with...
Right, yes.
And you'll occasionally see 3 heads pop out of this ball of fire. Or he's just kind of like Galactus, from the Fantastic Four. He's just a sort of big cloud thing. And even the Omniviewer came up with that same theory as well.
Yeah. Yeah, no, I totally agree. I was thinking he's going to be in Final Wars, where he was the Gorath meteor or something.
Yeah.
Just be the meteor. He's not going to turn into anything else.
Right. And let's see, what was I going to say? Oh, yeah. How I expect the third movie to pan out, I bet you, it's going to be like Gorath from Godzilla Final Wars, where
yes.
Ghidorah is heading to Earth. Maybe he shoots some beams at Godzilla. Godzilla shoots a beam at Gorath. There's a big explosion, and either both of them die so that the humans can go, oh, wow, I guess it's over now. Hooray. Or maybe Godzilla will survive, but he'll be in hibernation, and the humans learn to survive with him alongside the Hotowa.
I don't know about Godzilla, but I'm afraid I might be asleep by the time that happens. Watching this movie again. It has the same patterns these first two.
Right.
Oh man. And I forget one of your friends did the really cool thing about drawing the Ready Player One Mechagodzilla and like how that was like worked out better than this.
Yeah, he did a parody of like a Black Panther where it's like Ready Player One Mechagodzilla standing over the defeated body of anime Mechagodzilla, where it's like, is this your Mechagodzilla? Failed to activate.
Yeah.
Is this your king?
Which
no, you're referring to Steve's depiction.
Steve's, yeah.
Okay, his depiction, yeah, it was really funny. I may actually use that as like the title card for this whole video, where it's like you got Ready Player One Mechagodzilla saying like "stupid kids in their videos games."
Yes.
And meanwhile, anime Mechagodzilla is like, they said it was my movie. They said it was the year of Mechagodzilla. And I guess we don't have to talk about the design of Mechagodzilla, considering that it doesn't factor into the movie whatsoever.
Right.
But I will say, it is a butt-ugly design.
It's terrible for the figure, and I'll go back to Omniviewer again.
Yeah.
Did you see his video where he had talked about, like, that no matter how you depict characters in different formats, they should still be recognizable. Like you can do a chibi Godzilla and still know it's Godzilla.
Yeah.
Superman can be depicted in all kinds of different ways, but you can look at it and still say, "Oh, that's Superman." If you look at that version of Mechagodzilla, you don't really look at it and think, "Oh, that's Mechagodzilla." You know what I mean? Like, and he was totally right.
I would say it's vaguely dinosaur shape, but it's just so busy, so overly complicated. It's just like, it got so much going on, and it's like, yeah, if you try to translate it into any other style, it'd be practically unrecognizable. Now, I'll give Steve a lot of credit here. He had to reduce the detail on Mechagodzilla in order to look somewhat presentable in his little parody image. And there is another person who, on DeviantArt, he does a lot of chibi mecha art called Benisuke. And I'll share you the image right now. He does a really good job at least trying to portray a chibi version of Mechagodzilla. And I'll share with you on Skype right here, trying to avoid any sort of dead air.
Yeah. Okay, got it. And okay, yeah, I just saw that.
Yeah, but even then, like, if you look at it, try to figure out where the arms are.
Right. And I think I hate to keep using the Ready Player One analogy, but the Mechagodzilla in Ready Player One looked, you can't even see the arms, I think, looked different from any other Mechagodzilla we've seen, but still was easily recognizable as Mechagodzilla when you saw it, right? And
you can easily see, like, which aspects of Mechagodzilla, like, which designs were, like, clear inspirations.
Right. Where in this one, it's just, it just looks like some kind of weird kid's toy that's not.
It looks like he's kind of made out of blocky Legos, and someone stuck some sticks on the spikes on the side. Now I know some people have compared him to looking like Zoids because Zoids also have very busy designs.
Yes.
But I think that's an insult to Zoids themselves, considering that some dinosaur Zoids look more like Mechagodzilla than this thing does.
No, they do. This thing looks like they took the front half of the Millennium Falcon and glued it onto some crap.
Yeah, like here's this one Zoid called Berserk Fury, which I feel like would have been like the perfect sort of template for anime Mechagodzilla, considering that he's got the same sort of like horizontal posture. Again, I'll send it to you right now on Skype. There you go. This is a Zoid.
And here's the thing: even with this terrible Mechagodzilla design we had, I would have been happy to have at least seen that on the screen. Oh yeah, this Zoid is cool. This Zoid would have been much better. Yeah. But
I'll send you another Zoid right here.
Okay.
So let's see. Actually, I think this might actually be some sort of like a much closer homage to Godzilla. And yeah, Zoids do have busy designs, but I don't think they're overly complicated. You can still manage to see overall shape to these creatures. Like, sure, there's like a lot of panel details and a lot of vents and some guns attached to them. But overall, they're not so busy, and they've actually got some color to them, as opposed to being this mishmash of silver pieces just jutting out of everywhere.
Right. Yeah, the second one you sent me, actually, it looks kind of a little bit more like the Ready Player One Mechagodzilla than anything, maybe. But it would have been much better. But again, even the first jutting out everywhere design, if we had at least seen that rise up to fight Godzilla, I think would have pleased me more, at least.
Right. And, people were always saying, like, it's kind of funny, people were always saying that, oh, you can't judge anime Mechagodzilla until you see it in action. Well, we pretty much saw all it could do in the anime trilogy.
Yeah. Yeah, it's, I'm sure you feel this way too, but just so we can say this. But as you and I looked back over the history of animated Godzillas,
Mm-hmm.
I feel like this series so far might be the worst one out of them all. I mean, would you?
I would say so, because even though like the Hanna-Barbera series definitely has its problems, it's got a lot of charm to it that like you and I can appreciate. If of course, there are people who don't appreciate, who don't like Hanna-Barbera. Again, that's fine. Right. And maybe they like this because this is more serious and more quote unquote badass than the silly, campy, cheesy, corny Hanna-Barbera series. But for me, it's like, I would take Hanna-Barbera over this any day. I would prefer Bambi versus Godzilla. I would prefer Godzillaland, because at least that is like adorably cute and charming in a way. This thing has no charm, it's got some entertainment value, but it's got like no charm, no excitement, no energy, no charisma, no imagination. That's the thing. That's the perfect thing to describe these two movies. There's a lack of ambition and a lack of imagination.
Right, and I've tried to look at it from different angles. Like you mentioned Godzilla Land, and if you go back and look at the review you and I did of that, it's both like, it's cute now that we're adults, but you can definitely see that for its target audience, that this would be something that would be enjoyed by preschoolers. My preschooler enjoyed it. I don't necessarily see how the majority, and again, I don't mean to down you if you do like these films. God bless you, I'm glad you do. Yeah. But how they feel like the people making these movies feel like they're hitting their target audience, because I just can't imagine that they are, for the most part. Clearly
this was, even though they did the whole Netflix thing, I feel like the Netflix thing was sort of like a cheaper way of getting these movies out there to a mass public audience. I don't really think that this was sort of like a Devilman Crybaby situation where you could feel that this was meant for like audience outside Japan. I feel like this was like made solely for the sake of cashing in on Godzilla right before Warner Brothers is ready to take back the mantle. But in the meantime, these movies bombed, like especially the second movie. Like the first movie didn't really do all that so hot in Japanese movie theaters, but the second one definitely bombed in Japan. So not even like, if this was meant for Japanese audiences, they could give less of a shit about this.
Yeah, and I mentioned this to you off air, and again, we'll keep going. If you guys aren't following the Omniviewer, you should, by the way. But he had brought this up that after seeing these two movies, is it a concern after 2020 when Legendary, I don't want to say they're done, but that Toho starts doing more films, that because they're more of a conglomerate now than a movie studio, that they may have lost touch in how to do a kaiju movie that's going to please most fans?
I would definitely agree so. I mean, like, the reason why Shin Godzilla is as good as it is, or was as praised as it was, because, of course, it's a very divisive and very subjective movie. So let's just say it was as successful as it was.
Right. You can't argue the success of it.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. And the reason why Japan, you cannot argue that Japan loved the Shin Godzilla, which was the exact opposite reaction of the anime trilogy, I think was mostly due to who they hired to work on this movie. And that was, Shinji Higuchi and most definitely Hideaki Anno. These guys were clearly people who had a lot of experience in their, a lot of experience in the past, and clearly had a vision for what they wanted to do with Godzilla. And, they had a motivation, they had a message in this movie that truly spoke to the audience of Japan as of 2016. With this movie, it's like, sure, they got experienced people, but it's like, I guess they just couldn't give less of a shit about this, unlike Hideaki Anno. He had something to say with his movies.
Right.
Whereas with Gen Urobuchi and whoever they got to direct it, I feel like they're just doing this for a paycheck, and they're just like, whatever, we'll just make some generic sci-fi shit. They'll eat it up either ways.
Right. I kind of feel like it might be comparable to something like the live action Dragon Ball movie, which is terrible. We're like, we're just going to make this because fans will come see it, and even if they don't like it, we'll get their money type of thing.
And I'm looking at the director, Kobun Chizuno, and he's worked as a film and television director, and he's mostly worked on a lot of Detective Conan stories, or for those who don't know, the English title, Case Closed. Other than that, he did work on Knights of Sidonia, which was, made by the same animation company as this series.
Right.
Let's see. Apparently this director is also working on something... Oh yeah, this guy's obviously gonna work on the next animation movie. So yeah, this director, he's just kind of, in terms of films, he's just worked on nothing but Detective Conan movies. So obviously this guy has never touched any sort of material related to like Godzilla or big giant monster sci-fi stuff. And Gen Urobuchi, I don't know what's happening with him, because obviously he got a lot of praise for his work on, like Madoka Magica, Fate Zero, Psycho Pass. Especially Madoka Magica has been like his one claim to fame. And I mentioned previously Kamen Rider Gaim, which I hear is considered one of the better recent 2010s Kamen Rider shows. But I don't know what's happening here. I don't know if this is just a lazy director, or if this is just a lazy writer, or if this is just like Toho just letting them do whatever they want, not being not enforcing them to get off their asses and make something exciting.
That's what I was thinking, is maybe like a lack of oversight. Like I could even, you and I are both writers. Sometimes if you write a bad story, you don't always see it. I'll often have my brother look at something before I turn it in. He's a writer too, and on at least 2 occasions he said to me like, "Man, this thing is crap. You've got to go back and redo it." And I wonder if nobody's checking on these stories, so maybe the writers thought they were doing something good and nobody looked at it to say you need to develop these characters better. Godzilla aside.
Yeah, even someone like Akira Toriyama, when he was making Dragon Ball, he had editors that he worked with, and his editors would say, "Oh, this doesn't look so good. I think you should change it."
Right, and I know you feel strongly that critics are a good thing, and I agree to show us we're doing something wrong. I feel like maybe there's nobody who's checking this work for them. Does that maybe make sense?
Yeah, that's probably. Or it could be a combination of multiple factors involved. Maybe it was this thing. Maybe Toho got way too comfortable, or everybody got way too comfortable after the success of Shin Godzilla, and they said, "Oh, just do this thing here, and everyone will immediately automatically love it."
Oh, that's true. I could see that being the case. Right. A little too full of themselves, maybe, and lazy. Mm-hmm.
Yeah. It could be a thing where it's they're just doing this for a paycheck and nothing more.
Because again, I like Shin Godzilla, and they showed you could do a movie there where it's not a very active Godzilla. I mean, the action scenes that are in it are fantastic.
Yeah.
But by doing good storytelling and having a good message around it, or at least an in-depth message, it really can draw you into the story. Where I don't feel like that was connected with at all in the 2 films we've watched so far for this anime trilogy.
Yeah. So yeah, it'll be very interesting if we eventually got more information as the years go by, and I don't know, maybe time will tell if we'll get an explanation as to what led to the creative decisions behind this anime trilogy. But it's not over yet. There's still one more movie to come, so I'm very curious to see how it's going to end. But at the end of the day, I think this trilogy is just going to be considered like a failed experiment, and it's going to be lost to time eventually.
I think so too, and I think for me, here's the factor that really shows me how much I didn't care for this, is that I'm a huge Godzilla fan, much like yourself, much like your fans, I'm sure. And I want to make it a point to have every Godzilla movie that's out there in my collection.
Yeah.
And I have zero desire to purchase this where it's available for digital download or on Blu-ray or whatever. To round out a collection.
I feel the exact same way, man. I have no desire to ever own these movies, despite being a Godzilla fan who wants to have every single piece of Godzilla media or movie as I can get my hands on. But yeah, it's just maybe I'll revisit them at some point in the future, but to own them, I really could not care less about that. And let's see if there's anything left. Of course, I will see the movie when it comes out, just for the sake of at least seeing all the movies that are out there.
Right, I'm with you. Just so I can see it. But,
yeah, and just to see how this whole train wreck will end at the end of the day.
And I just want to say...
I also want to say it's a huge missed opportunity, because for years people have wanted a Godzilla in animation because they feel like you can do more with animation than you can in live action. And it's super weird to see that even despite the fantastical post-apocalyptic setting, it feels like they're doing less in animation than they could do in live action.
Yeah, and I think that's the most frustrating part of it, is that it does seem like that you're doing less. Where I think if you, again, go back and look at all the other Godzilla and animations that we had looked at least they, even with the Hanna-Barbera series, they tried. Like, Godzilla would at least appear at the beginning, appear at the end, he'd wrestle some other monster or whatever.
Yeah,
but
even if they recycled a lot of animation, like walking cycles and bursting out of the water, they at least would do some new animation to have Godzilla grapple with, his foes and stuff.
Right. Was it you who said when we were watching it the first time, like, God, I wish they had Captain Majors to push his button and call Godzilla right about now, because it would have helped out. But yeah, I think, I'm not like angry at these films or anything. Some people seem to think that's the case. I think I'm just more sorely disappointed. Yeah.
Where's that image of Kevin Sorbo from the Hercules TV show, just shouting on the air, "Disappointed!"
Yeah, that's about what it is.
But yeah, at the end of the day, man, what rating would you give Godzilla's Shitty on the Edge of Boredom?
Oh, man. I've been struggling with this for a while. Man, I really might have to go with the first one that I've given out. I know we don't do half, so I might give a half for the vulture scene, but otherwise I'm leaning towards a 1.
Okay. I'm going to have to give credit to the visuals, the animation, the ideas. I'm going to have to give this one a 2 out of 5. It's not the worst thing I have seen. It's just mostly just it's just competency. It's just like it does the bare minimum to entertain you. And so I'm just going to give this one a 2 out of 5, just like what I gave back then.
Yeah, I feel like I felt entertained for like 7 minutes and the whole.
It's kind of like imagine a movie like Godzilla '98, where it's like there's some entertainment, there's some like moments of entertainment there, followed by a lot of stupidity. And it's like there's some aspects you come there to enjoy for, and some parts you want to fast forward through. It's like it's worth watching once if you're a Godzilla fan. Just be aware of what you're going in for, what you're in for. So I guess, yeah.
Yeah, no, I was about to say, right. It's and that to me is another.
It's worth a look just for the sake of curiosity, I guess.
Yeah, but I feel like for me, Godzilla films, for the most part, have a high rewatchability factor. Yeah. And this is not the case here.
Right, yeah. I mean, for me, to me, a 3 out of 5 is just like, watch it once and you're done. For me, a 2 out of 5 would be watch it once, but with caution.
Okay. Yeah. That seems pretty fair.
I mean, that's just how I personally viewed my rating. But, yeah, that would be my final rating for Godzilla City on the Edge of 17.
I like City on the Edge of Boredom. It's pretty accurate. Jeez.
Anyway, City on the Edge of Tomorrow. Those are our thoughts on that. And we were hoping for so much more with this one, given how much they advertised and how much they promised. But to use a quote that I always loved to use when I first saw the movie, if you were expecting Godzilla, if you're expecting Mechagodzilla and you're expecting a lot of kaiju action, to quote Willy Wonka, you get nothing! You lose! Good day, sir!
Yeah.
So that was our addendum to Godzilla City on the Edge of Battle. Thank you very much, Matt, for joining me on both our viewing and our recording experience. it's been a pleasure being able to do this with you again, and I look forward to. I don't look forward to really so much to watching the last movie, but I look forward to talking about the movie at least with you.
Yeah, we need to do it MST3K style again, like we did last time.
Right, absolutely.
That'll help out a lot. Real quick, Andres, I just want to say a big thank you to all of your listeners that have helped out a lot with making the third shirt for Kaiju vs. Cancer a success. So thank you to everybody out there, and we're going to have more stuff coming.
Yes, absolutely. And so, is there anything that you're personally working on that you'd like to pimp out before we close things off?
Yeah, the comic I've been working on with Frank Parr and Wayne Smith of Arrakis X Atomic Rex is available now. It looks fantastic. It's 115 pages. Please contact me through Facebook if you want a copy. I think it'll be up on Amazon soon, but I have copies I can sign and send out to you for the same price. So, please check me out there, and look for a anthology with my superhero character, which will still have kaiju in it, Raptor, that will be sold specifically for Kaiju vs. Cancer. So just check my Facebook page and the Kaiju vs. Cancer webpage for that as well. But any sales from that novella of short stories will go to help our fundraiser out.
Excellent. And so let's see. As for me, I'm currently you can purchase I recently worked on as an editor on Garayan's recent kaiju book, Nago-Rayar, Kingdom of the Monsters, and you're able to purchase it off of K Productions website. Let's see, I just had the website right here with me. Just gotta get it right back again. Okay, so
wait a second. I'm pretty sure it said it was Andes Perez who did that.
Damn it! Typos aside, I did work on that book, and you can purchase it off of kproductions.co.th, and there you can register on the website to make an account. You'll need some Google Translate to translate a few bits and pieces here, but overall, you just registered on the website so that you can get it, so you can say for yourself that it was a relatively easy task to register on the site, to make an account on the site.
Yes, I can, and I can also tell you, from what I've seen of the book, it looks tremendous. So I think it's probably a lot of fun, and I can highly recommend it so far.
Absolutely. And if you want to support indie kaiju comics, you can purchase Nago-Rayar, Kingdom of the Monsters, Volume 1 on kproductions.co.th for, even though it says the price is 500 THB, it is a Thai website. So 500 THB roughly translates to $15. And if you live in America, the shipping was going to be about $20, so you're gonna pay roughly $35, which I don't think it's too much, considering you're getting an 80-page comic filled with luscious art and hopefully decent writing from yours truly. I didn't write the story. I simply was an editor, but I had to translate a lot of Garayan's writing into English that would work for an native English speaking audience. And I hope I did a good enough job. If you have the book, please let it spread the word about it. Please let me know how I did on as an editor. And again, a big shout out to Garayan, however you pronounce his name, and K Productions for letting me be a part of this project. Thank you very much, guys. I got a physical copy of the book this past week, and I'm really happy to finally have something I can say that I had a hand in creating directly. So, until Draco Azul comes out, I will definitely be pimping out this comic in future videos to come. So yeah, please support indie kaiju writing. Please support Nago-Rayar, the Nago-Rayar comic. Please support Matt Denian's novels and all future projects to come. So that has been our review for Godzilla City on the Edge of Battle. I have been Andres Perez, aka Kaiju Noir.
I've been Matt Denian.
And until next time, everybody, take care.